So welcome everyone. We're happy to see you today at our April book club meeting. And our book this month is called Emalia. Am I pronouncing Emalia correctly, Brooke?
No, it's Emalia.
Oh, Emalia.
Yeah,
That's so pretty.
thank you.
I love that name, by the way. That's the first time I had ever heard that name before, and probably why I didn't know how to pronounce it properly. Emalia, how gorgeous.
People who don't know it's the Hawaiian transliteration for Emmeline, and we did not name our daughter Emmeline. But when the missionary, that was in the days when the missionaries came out to Hawaii. I'm in Hawaii, people, and everybody had these names, the New England names, and that was a New England name. And so the Hawaiians, just translated it. It became Emalia.
It's
So
a beautiful, beautiful name
thank you.
and a beautiful person.
Yeah.
She's a beautiful person in spirit as well. Okay, so we have Brooke A. Brown, Ph.D., who wrote Emalia, A Mother-Daughter Journey from Here to Beyond. And I have a copy here of with my post-it notes of Brooke's book, Emalia. And I don't know if you have the hard copy of it. This is the paperback. The cover is gorgeous. I don't know if my camera is not
No, it's
uh,
good.
that clear, but it's a beautiful, beautiful book cover and an incredibly beautiful tribute to Brooke's daughter. So Brooke Brown is a mother, writer, retired clinical psychologist, a longtime vipassana meditator who lives on Maui, the island of Maui. She was raised in Hawaii, attended Punahou School, graduated from San Jose State University, and in midlife obtained her doctorate from the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology in Menlo Park. After practicing for many years as a clinical psychologist in San Francisco and Marin, Brooke returned home to Maui. Brooke's website is www.brookebrownphd.com. Soon after, her daughter Emalia was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer, a life-changing event for Brooke, her family, and her friends, and of course for Emalia. After Emalia's passing in 2014, Brooke founded, and I hope I pronounced this right, but you'll correct me, Brooke, Nā Keiki O Emalia.
Perfect.
Okay. A Maui nonprofit dedicated to serving grieving children and teens, and
Keiki,
served for sorry.
keiki is the Hawaiian word for children
Okay,
or
okay, good.
child. And then when you put na in front of it, it becomes plural.
Okay. Wow.
It's a
That's
simple.
great. Well, and you have a glossary in your book as well of the Hawaiian terms, and that's very appreciated.
Mhm.
I I've never been to Hawaii. I've always wanted to go, and I'm just not familiar with the language or the culture, but it was really a dimension of your story that you presented so well. Okay, so Brooke served for 5 years as the executive director before diving into the study of evidential mediumship and the afterlife. Emalia is Brooke's true account of her journey through life, terminal illness, and the death with her beloved daughter, Emalia. This is a review that I wrote. So I'm giving you my review of the book right now. This heart-wrenching, honest story of Brooke and Emalia's bond in life moved me through the deep feelings that they were faced with after Emalia's diagnosis, and culminates in Brooke sharing her inspiring grief healing and her discovery of her continuing bond with Emalia in spirit. So again, I'll show you the book. And I'll turn the meeting over to Brooke and take it away, Brooke.
Thank you, Camille. I'm just curious because it will determine what I do next. Have any of you who are present read the book?
I haven't read that.
Okay, so two of you have. Okay, because I'll read you a couple of pieces from it then right off. I mean, I didn't want to be repetitious if everybody had read the book, but it'll kind of give you a feeling. I had a hard time landing on what part to read because I divided the book into 5 very discrete parts, and they're different parts, and I didn't. So it's kind of like if I pick one piece, it doesn't give you the others. So I'm just going to skip here to one of the things. Emalia was really loved by her friends, the community. She was just one of those beings. There are these beings that just move through life like that. They're just like love bubbles, you know, they just touch everybody. And so many people said to me, and it's just not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. And so this is in my book. Many people remarked to me that it wasn't fair that Emalia had cancer. I understood what they meant and appreciated their sentiment. She loved and was loved. She participated fully in life. She never smoked nor abused her body, and her mental and emotional outlook was always optimistic. Thus, she appeared the picture of good health and unlikely to host a serious illness. I think Emalia's having a serious cancer rattled people's cages. Cancer became a closer threat to their well-being. However, in my opinion, deservingness ranks alongside fairness as another myth. Again, countless people remarked that Emalia didn't deserve the cancer hand dealt to her. I line up with anchor Nora McInerney, who said in a TED Radio Hour talk, Life's Rough Edges, that she couldn't love or believe in a God who said, well, you get a Tesla, you get a tumor. I remember once, only once, wondering why my beloved daughter was hit so hard by cancer, and that had happened to me. Instantly, I heard the answer, why not me? How crazy is that? To personalize something that didn't belong to me? That was the truth, clear and simple. Why not me? No reason whatsoever. There was nothing special about me. Absolutely no reason why I should be exempt from life's cruelties and hardships. Emalia's cancer was impersonal to each of us in her orbit, and her cancer underscored our being joined in our humanity. So that was one piece that I picked.
So I'm gonna I'd just like to comment on that piece that you picked from your book. That's a great example of the raw emotion that I was talking about, that, you know, as a reader, I could feel it deeply within myself, what you were experiencing. It's your deep truth. Mm-hmm. And I commend your courage to write from your truth, that something that difficult. It was honestly, it was hard to read it sometimes for me without being brought to tears. And but that's also the good thing about your book and the way you write it, and how you are so honest about everything, that a person going through this or something similar, the grief that we've all experienced, can feel it, and it can bring ours. Sometimes it's a good thing to bring our own grief to the surface, and to it helps us through it. So I felt that I was helped by that, to read it as hard as it was.
Thank you. You know, rather than just read another part, I may come back to it or not, but piggybacking on what you said, the book is in 5 parts. The first part is basically a thumbnail sketch of who Emalia was. Just I give you Emalia. This is who this person was. The second part was from the moment of diagnosis to her death. And then the third part was the celebration of life that happened afterwards. The fourth part, again, is a discrete part. It's tools and practices that anybody dealing with any grief can use. And then the last part it's my reflections. So there are 5 pieces. And many people, feedback I've gotten, some people have stopped the book entirely when they start the second section, and it's just too much for them. And when I learned that they do this, I've said to them, skip part 2 and go to part 3, and go back to part 2 if you ever want to down the line, because it is raw. I mean, I just put it all out, and I didn't hold back. And one of the reasons, the main reason I didn't, is when Emalia died, her little guy was just shy of 3, and her son. And she was so amazing going through this cancer time that I knew that he wasn't going to remember her. He was just too young. He might have some memories of her, but he wasn't going to be privy to this. And I wanted him to know who she was. And I felt that all of these, the nuts and the screws went into who she was, how she bore herself through this whole thing. And so I wanted him to have that record when he's older, if he wants to read it. It's there. So that's why I was so specific. And also, I think that in a larger sense, I've had friends die of cancer, and I've had friends suffer from cancer who are still living. And I had no idea. And in terms of, I still didn't get it. What a hard ordeal it is for the patient, for the person. And so in writing it, I thought, okay, it educates people. It can make people aware and appreciate the people that they have who are in remission, or who, have beaten it, or whatever, but so it was, I just put it all out, but mainly I wanted him to, she fought. I mean, I have no question in my mind that if Emalia had not had a child, she would have checked out long before she did. Period. But she wanted to live for him. She just hung in there. She did not want to leave her child. And she knew her husband would be fine. She knew I would be fine, but she did not want to leave her child. And I wanted him to know how hard she fought to live for him. So that was really what motivated the explicitness of that second part of the book. But it can be skipped if it's too much for people. I mean, I like that kind of thing when I read, but that's me, I mean, I'll cry and go through a box of Kleenex, but it's the books that really touch my heart are the ones that really are meaningful to me and last and stay with me. So I just wanted to write that way. So that's what I did.
Well, I can imagine when he's old enough to read about his mother, she's the person that she is. You really, as a reader, feel like you know her. And then, I thought it was so nice that you added the pictures of her. After reading about her and then seeing her in the photos of her life, and you really feel like you know this person. So you accomplished that for your grandson, that he will know her, if I feel I know her after reading her story. And it's just, she's just an incredibly beautiful person, and how she was, how she carried herself and with dignity through her entire illness, and her perseverance, and then to see her, and she radiates through your words and in the photos of her. So I'm glad I read it, even though, as I said, there were moments when I felt like I don't know if I can keep going. It's so heart-wrenching, but when you get to the photos, it's like, oh, I'm so glad I did. And now I see her in person, and so it's a very personal story, and a very personal connection with anyone who reads it as well.
Thank you. I hope that would be the case. I mean, I really wanted him to have it because each of us, when everybody has their own window, I mean, but I was with her constantly during that time, and some of her friends were with her in parts, and she stayed in touch with all of them. I mean, that was a constant, but we all have our different lenses, and I just wanted her son to have this down the line, because I thought, when I die, it's gone. I mean, I'm the resource. And so I wanted to record it. So when he was old enough to appreciate the mother he had, he would have it. So that was
beautiful. That is so beautiful.
And she was inspiring. I mean, and I say that, and obviously she was my daughter, so I'm biased, but it was staggering to me after she'd passed, the number of people, it's been 9 years, and people still come up to me sometimes and they go, "Oh, Emalia was your daughter?" And I say, "Yes." And then they tell me some story, or, like they worked with her at the YWCA, or, that she was a teacher of theirs at school or whatever. And they tell me these stories about her, but she was one of those people that just inspired a lot of people. And so I just wanted to give it back in some way. And
wow. Well, that's fantastic.
I wanted her son to have a memory of this, because so much of, well, my memory will die with me. I'm older.
I hear you on that. I hear you on that. Yeah.
And hopefully that it will help other people. I mean, that was also my motivation.
Yes, and it clearly has and will continue to, and it's a permanent record, which means it will continue to help people for a very long time. Actually, we can't really imagine how far it will go when we write our stories. So it's a wonderful thing, and people do go through circumstances like this, and that's what I found. When it first happened to me, when my son passed, I felt like the only person experiencing this, and it was through reading books like yours that I've come along as far as I have in my grief journey. And there's always something, each of our stories is we have this common bond or thread throughout our stories, but they also are unique in a way that we can learn from each other. So that's so helpful. I was thinking maybe we could ask a few questions at this point, and then if we have time to read another excerpt after a few questions.
No, absolutely, and feel free to ask me anything you want. It's all fair game.
Okay, well, I'll start with the first question. I think we probably covered and answered my first question, which was what inspired you to write the book. But if there's anything else that you have to add to that.
I just wanted to mainly the main thing was, first of all, I wanted my grandson to have my experience of her, because he wasn't going to, her best friends have taken him under their wing, and he's going to get their perspective. But because I was with her so constantly, I was there, and I just felt, no, he needs this. So
Yeah.
that was it.
So I'll ask so we are going to touch on the spirit factor in the book. But we haven't really talked about it in any detail yet. So how did spirit factor into writing this book? And do you feel that there was any guidance from the other side?
Totally. Emalia was with me the whole time. I'd kept a chronicle while she was ill, because when she was diagnosed, I mean, she was diagnosed, just like that. I mean, she was, when she went to the doctor, she was stage 4 colorectal cancer. So, I mean, there was no gradual progression there.
Yeah.
And she came home and had said, Mom, I've got 30 to 50, she cried, 30 to 50 tumors, lesions in my liver. And, that's when my mind stopped working. I had to write everything down. My memory didn't work anymore. Couldn't remember. So I started just chronicling, not a journal where you dump emotionally, but just a chronicle, so I could remember, because my memory was shot. And separately I did have a journal, and I journaled some things, but that took me somewhere else. I've lost the thread of where I started. Help. The question was.
Well, the question was, do you feel that you had spiritual guidance writing the book, and how did spirit factor into writing the book?
Thank you. When Emalia passed, I just felt she'd left her body, but I just always have felt her with me, and she was in spirit form. So I talked to her all the time and continued to talk to her. And I had kept this chronicle, as I said, just that was my external memory, basically, because my own was shot. And I just felt it was she loved her son so much, and she was such an awesome mother, that I went, oh, I've got to write this. I've got to write a book. So he's got what I'm the repository for, because when I die, it's gone. So that was what propelled me to start writing. But it was continually a communication with spirit, because I would sit at my computer and I didn't know what to do. And I would just sort of ask, well, Emalia, what'll I do? And so I just wrote all these different things. And then finally, I just did a huge printout, and I cut everything up, and I sorted it all over my bedroom floor, and I just put it in categories and wrote from there. But it was a continual dialogue with spirit, with Emalia, and feeling inspired, and no, do this. And there were places where I kind of would tend to hold back, and then something was like, no, just, if you're going to do it, go big, and so I didn't hold back, and that's where I think the second section is too much for some people. I mean, several people who knew her, my friends, good friends, have not read the book yet, because they got stopped by the second part, and they're unable to do it because it makes them too sad. And I've told them, I said, we'll skip part 2, go to part 3, but I don't know if they've done that yet.
Yeah. And part 3, certainly after reading part 2, I felt uplifted afterwards. It does, it's the part that really opens up to hope and healing. So it's very important. If you can't bring yourself to read something that sad, to get to the part where the hope and the healing is offered.
Yeah.
So in following with my question about spiritual guidance in writing the book, Emalia's story is kept very alive by what you've written, by your book. I can see that she's kept alive, that her memory is kept alive very much through you. And I was wondering, you say that you speak to her. Do you ever get any evidential signs of her? And what about any through her son? Has he ever mentioned anything
No.
to you?
Well, he's now 12, and no, he hasn't recently. But I just let me. I'm thinking I should read. Where am I? No, I was just kind of looking for different places. Well, the sign, I have a section, Signs from Beyond, and I'm just scanning through different places. Walking along the beach along Keaweiki Bay with JB. JB's my son-in-law. Later, Kahala, who was her son, my grandson, Kahala Kea. Kahala spotted a small, perfectly heart-shaped lava rock with 2 see-through holes symmetrically placed, picked it up and said, "Mama made it for me." We all agreed that it was another of the signs Emalia had talked about wanting us to keep watch for. Yeah, I mean, especially when my grandson was younger, it was like she was really there for him. During the same visit, we were Keaweiki Bay is a family place on the Big Island of Hawaii, and during that same visit, while balancing and walking along a fallen coconut tree trunk that served as a bridge to a tiny island in the center of the brackish pond, Kahala fell off unhurt into the water. Quote, "Mama laughed when I fell," unquote, he said immediately thereafter. Truly, had she been standing there, she would have laughed because he'd been having such fun and the fall was harmless. Either Emalia was a very real presence for him, which I believe, or he had incorporated her being there with him. Either way, his response warmed my heart. And several of her friends got signs after she died. I've recently begun asking her. We sort of play a game. You know, I've asked her for certain signs. You know, just I don't know, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, Emalia used to draw daisies. You know how children will draw like daisies? She used to draw daisies a lot. And I pictured one of these daisies, and I said, "Okay, Emalia. I mean, I'm in Hawaii. We do not have daisies." And I said, "Emalia, send me a daisy. I need a sign. I haven't asked you for a sign for a bit. Send me a sign." And then kind of, pushed it out, didn't think about it. But I always ask, send me a sign within maybe a few days or a week or something, then put it out of my mind. And by gum, the next day I was watching something on Netflix, and there was a scene, and all of a sudden, one of the protagonist was on a merry-go-round, I believe, with a child or something, and one of the other people calls out, "Daisy!" His name, and I knew in that instant that was my Daisy.
Yeah.
It's just fun. I mean, the spirit will talk with us. So Emily and I do that a lot.
That's amazing. I love the evidential signs. And sometimes I think like that's a great example of you're asking for a sign and in your mind you're thinking the flower, but it might come through in another way. So, keeping an open mind to how they, decide to send the signs to us as well. And in the context that they're sent and at the timing they're sent, they can we can get a lot of what their message is to us when we put all those dots together, and that's a very good one.
Yeah, oh, it's just wonderful. So I do that with her a lot. I'll just say, okay, sometimes I leave it open. Just send me a sign that I'll recognize from you, and send it in the next week, and then I usually put it out of my mind, but then something will come in. It's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask if anyone here has any questions. If you have a question for Brooke, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself. We don't have a big crowd today, so we could even have probably have everyone unmuted at the same time. It might not. Sometimes when everyone's unmuted, you get some interference. From the mics, I guess, all the open mics. But would anyone like to unmute and ask Brooke a question? Okay, well, I'll ask the next one. I have a list I wrote them down. Would you ever think at this point, would you ever think of any part of the book that you would rewrite, or anything that you have to add that, you might write another book?
I don't have anything to add at this point in time that I would write another book, but I think if I wouldn't rewrite anything, but I think in the front, wherever where I have my sort of like where I explain what her name was and whatever, I think I might put a note in saying part 2 is hard for some people. Please don't stop there. If part two is the hard, it's the part with you're with her every step of the way, and it's a tough read. I did that because I wanted Kahala, her son, to know when he was an adult what she went through. In other words, how hard she fought, what she went through to live for him. She was determined to live for him. And I have no doubt, I mean, she would have checked out sooner if she had not had a child. I know that in every bit of my being. And it seemed to me that it was important to put that in so that he would, because I was writing really for him, so that he would get the magnitude of what she went through out of love for him. That was my main thing. Plus, the other reason I did part 2 the way I did is that I've had friends who died of cancer. My mother had some cancers that didn't kill her, but she didn't talk about them. It was breast cancer, and then she had her toe cut off because of a melanoma, but she never talked about cancer. I think she just pushed it aside. So I didn't have any kind of intimate experience with cancer before Emalia. And I gained so much respect for anybody dealing with any kind of cancer that I wanted to put this out just to educate people, because I know that when somebody has cancer, a lot of times everybody pulls back. It's like they're scared they're going to catch it or something. I mean, I've gotten this feedback from people who have cancer, and this I know secondhand to be true. And so I just felt, no, this is a way of educating people and letting them know more about it. Because, man, what a cancer patient goes through is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, and that they keep showing up the way they do. I mean, Emilia said to me one day, I mean, and this was early on, but she was going through chemo, and she said, hey, Mom, if you know, I'm not, you don't have to worry about me. I'm not going to do it. But I understand why people drive their car off a cliff. I mean, it was just awful for her.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I wanted to educate people also. So they had, I mean, you can't, I don't think one can help but have great respect and admiration for any cancer patient who's undergoing treatment. It's unbelievable. It's so consuming. So that was, you know, why I did that.
So you ran an organization for grieving children and teens. Is there much out there for in the literature or in books
No,
that are written for kids going through something like this with their parents? And have you thought of doing a book for kids or a book for teens or both who are going through an experience like your grandson has gone through that might help that age group?
that's a really good question. And no, I have not thought specifically about it. But there are more books. The Dougy Center, which I mention in the book, and that would be Dougy, DOUGY.org, is an awesome organization, and they're all over the world. And they've got a great resource section on their website. And there are books. I've gone to these symposiums. The National Alliance for Grieving Children has an annual symposium, and I've gone to, I think, 4 of them, and 3 or 4 of them, and they have a book fair there. And there are lots of people that have written books for kids. There's more out there for kids than you'd think, but there still aren't a lot of books for grieving parents. I mean, mine now becomes an account, but that's different. Mine's more a memoir than a what. It's kind of it's an interesting thing. You got me thinking, but I feel like there are Donna Sherman, who was then the Dougy Center executive director, is still affiliated with them as a training director now. But Donna's written a book. I think it's called Never the Same. I have it. Where is it? I think it's my website. Well, the Nā Keiki O Emalia's website is nkoemaui.org. And they've just redone it. So it's a little different from when I was running the group, but I think they've left the resource section up. And there's some books there that can be helpful. And Donna Sherman has, as I say, she's written a couple of books, which are great. And the Dougy Center they've done trainings. We brought Donna out and she trained a few of us. So we've trained our people through them. But they have trained groups, people all over the country, all over the world. And Donna goes to Korea and Japan and all over doing trainings. And it's a wonderful organization. And, you know, it's just incredible. I really admire it so much. So it's a great resource if anybody can tap into it. And I think they run a summer, at least they used to run a summer, like a 5-day camp or something. I think you'd have to look into it. You're nodding, Benita. Or is that Renee? I can't use my big monitor, and your names are so tiny I can't read them. But you're nodding. Did they have a summer thing still? You're mute.
I'm not sure if it's still in effect, but I know they did in the past.
Yeah, because they're phenomenal. Anything that the Dougy Center endorses, man, I'd be on it, you know, without any hesitation. I think they're just top notch. And I mean, that was a beautiful example of how spirit was so present during this whole time with Emalia for me and afterwards, because I mean, I've never been an executive director of anything. I never planned to do anything like, found an organization. And I mean, it was interesting too, because my children, Emalia and her brother, are a 16th Hawaiian, not very much, but, there is Hawaiian in their family. And it wasn't until after I started Nā Keiki O Emalia that I learned about the Liliuokalani Trust program that they had trained with the Dougie Center and that they had on Maui for families, but their charter restricts them to only working with families or children who are part Hawaiian. And had I known, I would have plugged into that. But then Nā Keiki O Emalia wouldn't have been started. And I started mine, which is open to everyone. And, the Liliuokalani Trust people were very happy because then they had a source they could refer to. So, I mean, it's just beautiful how these things happen. But when the way Nā Keiki came into being was that I was visiting a friend in California, and he asked about Emalia, and I said, Baba, and he asked about, Kahala Kea, and I said, oh man, I wish there was something like the Dougie Center because it would be so great for him. And he just looked at me and said, well, why don't you start one? And I mean, but it's one of those moments that you can't shake off. And I just knew in that moment, this was it. And so I thought, what am I going to do? And so I had talked to a woman, a friend in Oregon, in Portland, and I called her finally when I didn't feel like talking to people very much when I was flat on my bed after Emalia died. And when I finally called her, Debbie, I called because her grandchildren were the same age. One of them was the same age as Kahala Kea when her daughter died. And I wanted to find out how her kids were doing because I was worried about my grandson. And she said, oh, the Dougie Center, just totally was fantastic. It's just a great thing for us. And so I mentioned this to my friend and he said, why don't you start one? So I was hit, as I say. And so the next, I don't know, as soon as I got back, I was in California. As soon as I got back to Maui, I was thinking about it. It just kept brewing and I had no idea what I do. So I thought, okay, I've just got to call the executive director of the Dougie Center. It's the best. I'll just ask. So I looked it up and it was Donna Sherman. And so one morning I called and I was shocked. She answered the phone. I mean, that was pretty magical. And as it turned out, it was very magical because I didn't even know what I was going to say. I said, Donna, this is Brooke Brown. I'm on Maui. My daughter died, whatever, 5 months ago or whatever it was. And I'm just thinking I need to start a children's grief center like your organization, but I don't know enough about this to even ask you an intelligent question. And I just left it there. And she talked to me for over an hour. I mean, it was 45 minutes, hour and 15 minutes or something. Just told me everything, all sorts of things. And it was unbelievable. And she said, it's wonderful you called when you did, because I'm leaving tomorrow for 6 weeks of training in Korea and Japan. So, I mean, that's the way spirit works, it just so beautiful.
The timing.
Yeah, spirit. And so then I'm driving, after I talked to Donna, I was driving down the hill. I live on the side of Haleakala, and I was driving down country and I was talking to Emalia and I said, well, Emalia, if I started something like this, I wouldn't even know what to call it. And she immediately told me Nā Keiki O Emalia. And I went, oh. I mean, but it's been this continual kind of exchange. Our loved ones are here. They are around us. I mean, I'm not special. They're, yours are all around. Aaron's with you too, Camille. He's with you all the time.
He does. He does.
You can play games with him. You can ask him to send you certain signs. I mean,
he comes up with some good ones. Makes me think. Makes me use my brain sometimes, connecting the dots. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was amazing. One of my friends is a medium, and she uses an online calculator tool. It's called the gematria, which is just fat. It's
Oh,
interesting.
yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with it at all. And anyway, she gave us an assignment. I'm in a development group. She gave us an assignment, and we all had page numbers, blah, blah, that we picked. And anyway, came the assignment. It had a lot of meaning for me. And one of the things that came out was, I forget where it goes now, because I'm tangling two stories in my brain. But as I told you at the beginning, Emalia was the transliteration for Emmeline. Oh, I know what it was. I did her exercise, which I won't tell you that piece. But I was feeling so cocky because it was just mind-blowing. It was about my mother-in-law who had just passed recently. And I thought, oh, so I said, Emalia, come on, send me another sign. I haven't talked to you for a while in terms of a sign. So send me a sign that you're around. And so she did, and I plugged it into the gematria, and I got I should remember the beginning. I've just blanked on it. But anyway, I got an answer that I thought was Emalia. And so I asked, and the answer that came out on this thing was Emmeline Brown, Emmeline Sweet. I know it came out as in the gematria. No, I was reading a book. That was what it was. One of my beach trash books. And there was a character that came on, Emmeline Sweet, Sweet. Well, the name Emalia is in a Hawaiian song, which is where we got it. And it's all in Hawaiian except for two words, Sweet Emalia.
Wow.
And everything else is in Hawaiian. So I went,
Wow.
So I put in the gematria, Emmeline Sweet is Emalia Brown, or Emalia Alexandra Brown. And what gets kicked out is like, yes, I am her.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
all around us.
It's incredible. Years and years ago, when I was still a skeptic, I somehow, this is long before I started any learning, which is recent. Aaron passed in September of 2019, and before that, I was skeptical about all of this stuff, like most skeptical people are.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow I ended up in a workshop that they did the gematria, the numerology, and it was just like unquestionable, some of it. And what we discovered through it was incredible. So I recommend, if anyone is interested in numerology, gematria is basically the Hebrew word for sacred numerology, which Kabbalah studies, which is very high level stuff that in the Jewish religion. But numerology is present in so many ways around us, and there's a lot of theories about the universe is a matrix of things, and we're part of that. It's just a fascinating subject, and there's some really good books out there about it. And if you ever get to see a demonstration live or on a video about it, you'll be really blown away. And even as a skeptic, I was blown away. And I thought, well, that one isn't easily explained away. That's for sure. Yeah, so that's remarkable. That's incredible that and again, when you say spirit guides us to these things, that we can tell by the timing and by the context in which they occur. So it sounds to me like you were guided to that.
Oh, without any question.
Yeah.
Without any question. Yeah.
Wow, that's a wow. We
Yeah.
all get at some point we get our wow moments, and I get a lot of wow moments through people. That's the other thing. Like even if I haven't heard from Aaron or had any signs from him in a long time, and I know a lot of people talk about how they haven't had any, but to hear from others is so validating for me. And that one is very validating. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I had not felt, in retrospect, I mean, some of Emilia's friends were, oh yeah, I got the sign, and I was so jealous. They were all telling me about all these signs they had. And I was just kind of, I mean, I really believed I was talking with her in my mind and that she was with me. But, doubt comes in,
Mm-hmm.
And so, am I just doing this because I miss her so badly? Because we were like this. But then I started asking for certain signs, specifics, and bingo, and started playing the sign game. And it's really remarkable. I mean,
Yeah. And Aaron that's one of the things that I have heard from Aaron about asking for signs. And he says, ask and be as specific as you can, because they're able to somehow manipulate the energy around us. And everything, as we know, is comprised of energy. So they somehow everything, we're connected to the energy out there where they are. And so we can be very specific and ask for these signs, and most of the time we get them. So, well, we have about 5 minutes left of our hour with Brooke. So before we sign off, I'm going to announce our book giveaway winners. And I think we're all here. The winners are still here. So Ramona, Renee, and Benita are our 3 book winners of a copy of Brooke's book. And Brooke is asking you. You're welcome. And Brooke is asking you all if you can contact her. You're welcome, Benita. Thank you for everyone who attended, and congratulations to our winners. Brooke has asked you to contact her at her website, through her website at www.brookebrownphd.com, which is in the chat, and just let her know where she can send you a copy of her book. And we have a couple minutes left. So Brooke, I'd just like you to just let everyone know, what's the most important thing you'd like to leave us with, and any other specific contact information you'd like to mention for yourself.
No, the last piece that the website is fine. That's a good way to do it. I have insomnia, so I'm underslept. My brain is not working. The first part you just asked me.
Just any final comments that you'd like to leave us with that you feel would be something important that we can have on our minds as we sign off.
I think one of the big things for me that I would share with you was I always have believed that we continued to live after we left our physical bodies, but it was a more of a faith than a belief. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how to put that, but I know now in every bit of my being that we continue to exist after we leave these earth bodies, because I know Emalia exists. I mean, and I believe that it's spirit with a capital S, but yet there's the specific, our specific access to spirit is the personality we knew here, the other, the soul personality that we knew here. In other words, they serve as our connector to something that's larger, but they are with us all the time, and it's not out far away. I mean, Emalia is here. She's here this morning. I mean, I know it in every bit of my being, and yeah, I think that's it. It's like, yeah, they're with us, and I think the big hurdle, at least it was for me, is getting past the doubting. You know, oh, I'm making this up. I mean, it's not so. You know, and it certainly for me has given imaginary playmates a whole new meaning. You know how adults sort of tend to dismiss little kids who have their playmates. I think they're seeing them. They're very real.
Yeah.
The veil just hasn't dropped.
Yeah, I agree.
So
agree.
they're with us.
Yeah, and if they're imaginary, it's okay too, because our imagination is connected to everything out there too. So
Imagination,
it's true.
Imagination is the image within.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's 1:00, and I want to thank everyone again for joining us today. And this has been a great meeting. And thank you so much, Brooke. Really appreciate the conversation.
And Brooke. Thank you.
Thank you for
And
inviting us.
and we'll see you at the next meeting.
She shall.
Much.
Have a great day.